This episode is sponsored by Verizon. Are you ready for your next assignment? As a leading communications technology company, Verizon is always looking for experienced leaders to step forward and help us stay competitive in the global marketplace. More than 10,000 veterans contribute their skills across our entire business. We're proud to work alongside them each day and fortunate to benefit from their outstanding skills, discipline, and experience. To learn more about joining our team, check out verizon.com/military. Welcome back to Beyond the Uniform. I'm Justin Seary, and my goal is to help military members and their families succeed in their civilian career. Today is episode number 317, Army to EVP at Hornets Sports and Entertainment with James Jordan.
Try to get anywhere from 180 to 200 events in the arena per year.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to do that. In a way, you have to deal with all kind of promoters. You have to figure out, you have to do with staffing those events. So, I mean, basketball, that's a game you get 42 games in the building.
Mm-hmm.
And so you take your 42 and, but you still gotta, you gotta get to 200 events per year. You can deduct the 42, but the rest of them, you got to grind it out.
Mm.
But it's all about giving back to the community. When you do that, you try to get events that support the objectives of the community. And you also try to figure out, from an organization perspective, we have different pillars we support. And one of them is the military. We do all kind of military events at the same time. So it's a broad view. It is really a business. It's really it is.
Mm. If you're interested in sports and entertainment, either as an enthusiast or as a potential career option, you've got to hear James's story. He went from 31-year Army veteran to being an executive vice president for Hornets Sports and Entertainment. Not only does this entail the logistics for each and every Hornets basketball game, but that is literally less than 20% of the events that occur at the Spectrum Center each year, and James oversees all of them. We talk about how much of our military experience translates well to operations. We talk about why veterans may love a career in sports and entertainment. And we talk about swimming in your own lane. James's younger brother is a guy you may have heard of, Michael Jordan, the Michael Jordan. Towards the end of our conversation, James and I talk about this, and his response to my question about this made me respect James even more. He has a wonderful perspective on the military transition, and I hope you enjoy this unique conversation. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd recommend checking out 4 other similar episodes, each of which I'll list in the show notes for today's episode. Those episodes are number 93, Matt Uford, Marines to editor and host at SB Nation. Episode 74, Nate Boyer, Army Green Beret to the NFL. Episode 258, Army Ranger to HBO and writing and directing movies with Brian Hansen. And episode 302, Navy SWO to ESPN reporter and host with Sal Paolantonio. As always, at beyondtheuniform.org, you'll find show notes with a text transcript of this episode, as well as links to everything we discuss, as well as 300 more episodes just like this. Make sure to sign up for our newsletter to get a first look at upcoming events and special promotional offers. With that, let's dive in to my conversation with James. Joining me today at the Spectrum Center in Charlotte, North Carolina, my guest is James Jordan. James, welcome to Beyond the Uniform.
Well, thanks. It's a pleasure to be here today,
So for listeners, I want to give you a brief bio on James. He is the Executive Vice President of Operations for Hornets Sports and Entertainment, where he has served for nearly 6 years. He started out in the Army, where he served for over 31 years, most recently as the 35th Signal Brigade Airborne Command Sergeant Major as part of the 18th Airborne Corps Task Force supporting combat operations in Afghanistan and Iraq. After his military service, he worked for over 7 years as the Director of Operations Administration for the EPS Corporation Field Service Company. So James, maybe to start things off, I know that was a very brief bio. Anything else you'd like people to know about your background?
No, I think, I guess it really tells, I came straight out of, I was in high school, ROTC. And I went straight out, I think I graduated on a Friday, and on that Sunday, I went in the military. at 17. You know, at that age, my mom signed for me to go in, but I think I was the oldest of 5 kids, so I just went in and stayed 31 years. And I guess I always use the analogy that I went in a boy and came out a man. So that's what's made me be an adult, basically, the military.
That's awesome. You know, one of the things I wanted to ask about is that so many guests we hear, or so many people in our audience we hear from, oftentimes they're trying to figure out, you know, whether to stay in until 20 years. And you left 20 years far in the rearview mirror. You went on to 31 years. I'm curious, what kept you going well past the typical point that people would retire from the military?
I think it really became a part of the military. Probably made me. As I say, I went in at 17, and at 20, and I was pretty well, probably E7, E8, somewhere in that category.
Mm-hmm.
But it had done so much for me, and I wasn't ready to go yet. You know, you have that taste, and I felt that I could give a little bit more. And then I was close to becoming an E9, pretty close. And I was saying, okay, why don't I, since I came in as an E1, why don't I, if I can see if I can go all the way to the top, become an E9. So I accepted it as a challenge. Plus, I was still loving what I was doing because, you know, you get to a point, you be in for so long, it becomes not about you. It becomes about the people around you. As people help you in your career, you see you can do the same exact thing. And you just figure out, okay, you know, I'm doing a good job here. I'm looking out for people. I'm taking care of them. Plus, I'm also taking better of myself. So I decided to stay a little bit longer.
That's wonderful. I love that sense of contributing to the careers of those around you and that active service. So walk us through you've been in for 31 years. Could you talk about what retirement was like, and especially what was your first job search like that led you ultimately to EPS?
That was a tough part because I think when I came up on 30, they decided that the brigade would go back to Iraq one last time. And so I made a decision then. My family didn't agree with it, but I made a decision then I would go back with the brigade the last time because I'd been in the brigade for so long. I was there from 1992. And most of the people who came in, I knew them when they first came in, like E1, and they came all the way up. But I knew them, a lot about their family. I understood, and there was a trust factor. So I decided, you know, I had a couple of jobs lined up, but I decided, okay, look, I'm going to do this 1 year. It was one additional year to go with the team until Iraq, the final time. And so I did that. And so when I got back, they said, okay, you know, it's time for you to go out now. If you really want to go, you can either leave in April or you can leave in September. So I really waited I think I gave up the position right about April. And then I started the job search a little bit. I think for me, it became an eye-opening because I think the day I officially retired, and I went in that day, I was a command sergeant major and went to HR, the out process, and everything was good to go. You know, I came to the front of the line and say, okay, you know, come on, sergeant major, we'll take care of you. So the next day I had to go back and final process, and they said, okay, well, Mr. Jordan, you need to pull a ticket and go take a seat, and then we'll call you when it's time. So I always use that because that was my point of making sure it was clear to me right then. Okay, you've done your job. It's time for you to do something for yourself. And so I'd been in communications for my whole military career. So I knew quite a bit of people in that industry. And I worked at Fort Monmouth in New Jersey for a period of time, which was the communications headquarters. So I worked a little bit in that, dealing with contractors and understanding that flow. So there was a warrant officer, a guy named Mr. Chuck White. He owned a local company, EPS, which was a part of the corporation. The corporation was in New Jersey, but the field service division was in Fayetteville. And I had some connections. I reached out to him and he did an interview, and I wanted to come in, you know, as a sergeant major, okay, I want to come in and be a leader right off the bat and give me a position. It didn't really work like that. So he basically said, look, you can come in and I give you a position you can start at. And so I went in and started as a project manager, entry level, for which at that time, I said, okay, look, you got a job, so accept the job and go do what you're doing. But it turned out very well. I really put me in a position that I could really help out a lot of other veterans because his company was driven a lot about hiring veterans that got out. And so that was one of the things I always felt I was committed to, and he was committed to. So we took care of a lot of veterans during that time frame. They got out. It was an easy way for us to still belong and still feel like we were giving back to the military.
Hmm. It must have been such a transition to go from so senior a leader where you knew so many people over such a long period of time, and then to, I don't know, kind of not start over again, but to start at a more junior level. That must have taken adjusting to get used to that.
It took quite a bit because I think one of the things about Fort Bragg is you're always on the edge and you always had that go, go, go mentality, and you always lead by the way. But when you get out, it's really just about you. You know, you can't tell people what to do, how to do it, or whatever. And so if you tell people to do, you give orders and they don't follow them, and it's different. So I had to learn real quick. Okay, you have to change your whole demeanor. So I went back and I think the time between April and September really gave me an opportunity to find myself and understanding that, okay, you're going into the real civilian world now.
Mm-hmm.
And that world, it's not, you have to figure out how to get people to do things in a different way because they're not part of the organization. So you got to figure out how to have good conversations, how to have focus, understand what people desires. And it was a little challenging first, but I was glad I transitioned into a government contracted job because I was still surrounded by people that had been in the military, understood just a little bit. So it was an easy transition, but it was not easy going from being at the top to being just someone normal that didn't get anything different. And people didn't really, they respected you by what you currently did, not what you had done in the past.
Mm-hmm. I can imagine too, like that was almost like an ideal transition place. Like you said, you're around people with similar backgrounds. You're still learning, the traits of being in a civilian job, but you have some people around you that understand your background. And it looks like you spent about 7 years there. Share a little bit more about like, how did this opportunity that for many would be a dream with the Hornets, how did that come about?
Well, I think one of the things that we found out, because my brother, he actually was a minority partner within the organization. And one of the things that they found, he said, okay, I wanted to bring you because of my leadership. Because one of the things I found out in the civilian world, you have a lot of people, but people proficient at some things, but not all the proficient at being somewhat of leaders. And not saying the military does it perfectly, but I think from where I came to where I finished at, gave me the ability, without a doubt, to be a good leader and be able to make some quick determination about people and how to deal with people in situations. And so in the business where he was in, I started out as a consultant. I would every now and then, about every 90 days, I would go up and talk to a couple of people to get a feel because him not being in the building every day and getting to understand of how the people really function and how I would be able to give him some of the feedback. And then after a period of time, we felt that there was need to be a change in how the direction of the organization for as a culture of the organization. He felt, okay, why don't you figure out how to accept a role within the organization in the operations division, because that's what I did anyway. As a sergeant major, I was an operations sergeant major in the military. And at Fort Monmouth, I did operations. And then the job I went to as a project manager for EPS, I basically, as I started out as a project manager entry level, I really finished running all the operations for the whole company, which we had quite a few different people as well as contracts in the U.S. and deployed in areas. So it was pretty good, but I had to deal with people, and sometimes the people that weren't necessarily in front of me. I had to convince people that work in other places how to get job done and how they felt about the organization. So that's how I transitioned. And so I transitioned to this position early to be able to give feedback from a leadership perspective. And it wasn't really about the name. It was more about what could I really provide. So I left a job that I think it took me 5 minutes to get from my house to EPS. I coached high school basketball. I coached soccer in the community. And I did quite a few other things in the community. So I gave up, again, somewhat of my freedom to commit to another organization, which is the Hornets, to try to take it to, I think, whatever level we can actually get it to.
Mm-hmm.
And so my value role was to come in with some documented success in the leadership area based on how I'd performed for those 31 years. And it's not really about what I think of. I think I did well. So, like I said, my resume in that period of time showed that at least I did some things for that organization to feel that it could promote me to the next level. And so I brought that here to try to do the same exact thing, is to try to embed some, I would say, some integrity, some trust, some discipline, and something about making sure that we treat people right.
Mm. I love that too, because it seems like when you left the military after 31 years, in some senses you took a step back with EPS, and over time you were able to quickly get promoted to a spot of leadership. And so I think that's a good reminder for listeners that you may need to take a step back when you make that transition. You may have something to learn about what it's like to work in a civilian organization. But like you said, their leadership experience is really incredible and can propel them further in an organization if they're willing to take that step back and kind of learn some new skills and then grow. And
I think
so, yeah,
that's
go
really
ahead.
valuable
Mm-hmm.
info, because I think one of the things that once I made some changes, I actually went back to at Fort Bragg to a couple of ACAPs
Mm,
where veterans were getting out, and they had to go through the process to just give them a feel how it is that you could say 31 years, and then when you get ready to transition, you really have to step back. You have to go back and really you have to visualize it, but also you have to get your mind right to know that you've got to, as you say very perfectly, you got to step back in order to go forward. And if you're not willing to do that, I've seen quite a few people not be successful because they try to take what they were in the military and use it out in the civilian world. It won't work.
mm-hmm.
You have to bag up just a little bit. And also you have to realize that it's a whole different uh, world you're living in, where people don't necessarily believe in the same values that you had when you were in the military.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So your title is Executive Vice President and Chief Administration Officer. Help us understand what does that mean? Like, what do you do?
A little bit of everything. That's I
Mhm.
think one of the things that we figured out, it's not really about the title. I don't really get caught up in whatever the title is, because I think they got me. I'm looking over the foundation. There's a couple other things, but I told them they can put whatever they want for the title. But my job is to sit here and try to figure out how to help the organization continuously move forward and take all those departments that keep us moving, functioning with the right people, with the right attitude about where we're going, and try to figure out how to have succession planning, make sure we can meet our revenue goals. So a little bit of everything, but
Mhm.
also from a somewhat of a like a supporting the ownership group that's not necessarily in the building every day. I have the ability to also give two perspectives. One is from an ownership perspective, where we're trying to go. And then from an executive perspective, where we sit is how do we build a team that understands that, it's really a business. It's not really just the Charlotte Hornets. We are Hornet Sports and Entertainment. And we have to run the arena, and we also have to provide all kind of shows, but we also have a team, basketball team here. We have a G League team in Greensboro. We just launched a 2K team that will
Mm.
start up next April. So it's really about a business. I don't really get stuck on the title or what the requirements. I know they asked a lot of me based on my experience of being able to pull people together, be able to function as a team. And it always goes back to me. I look at it as that command sergeant major out in front of a brigade or battalion, trying to figure out how to make everybody work as a collective group. And a lot of those I deal with indirectly versus directly. But people, as we had a meeting the other day, I'm saying, as a leader, they watch what you do and how you do it. And if you do it at a certain level, they will try to copy you. And that way, you make sure you are influencing them in a way to try to get it done.
I love what you said on that too, because I think when I think of the Hornets, when most people probably hear that, they think of basketball. And what you're saying is like you're in the entertainment business. Like it is not like that is definitely one big piece of what you do, but I'm guessing there's a lot of how do you increase the utilization of the stadium, and how do you I'm imagining there's so many different types of events that occur there. And it's wild for me to think of, like, as big as the basketball piece is, that is like one piece of a very large pie that's your responsibility. Is that fair?
That is fair because we have a requirement to run the building for the city, which we have to at least try to get anywhere from 180 to 200 events in the arena per year.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to do that. In a way, you have to deal with all kind of promoters. You have to figure out, you have to do with staffing those events. So, I mean, basketball, that's a game you get 42 games in the building.
Mm-hmm.
And so you take your 42 and, but you still gotta, you gotta get to 200 events per year. You can deduct the 42, but the rest of them, you gotta grind it out. Mm-hmm. But it's all about giving back to the community. When you do that, you try to get events that support the objectives of the community. And you also try to figure out, from an organization perspective, we have different pillars we support. And one of them is the military. We do all kind of military events at the same time. So it's a broad view. It is really a business. It really is.
Mm-hmm. And when you put it like that, it's clear why the operations piece is so important. Like I think of your experience, what I imagine your experience was like in the Army, managing and coordinating thousands and thousands of moving pieces and people and parts of the organization. And then to put that in perspective, 42 of 180-ish type of events, and like you said, the promoters and all of the logistics that goes into every single event. And then on a larger scale, it seems like it's so complex, so many moving pieces. And underneath it all, it's your operations experience that's helping to keep that moving smoothly.
Yeah, I always look at it the same as, you could either be a company commander, or you could be a battalion commander, or you could be a company first sergeant, so a major, where you have 4 or 5 different units and they're all doing different things at the same exact time, and they have a goal to meet, which will be they have an RTEP standard, they got some kind of training exercise, all those things going on at the same time, trying to get an ultimate goal, and you have to make sure they're successful. That's the same strategy I try to use. We got so many things going on. We have our weekly city reps updates. I call it city reps, we call it updates. And I've got some military terminology added in here and out there, But the idea that they understand where I'm coming from, things to bring us together. And we do, it's the same op tempo that we had in the military that we try to do. And most civilians, businesses, they really go to the military for feedback on how they did things and how they were successful. So if you look at the big business, it's quite a few. They either got someone in the military that has some surrounding in it because they bring the basic structure. You have a structure in place that they know work. The military structure does work. And the experiences you get, I find out every day that I can always go back to something that happened somewhere in my career that I can use it to move another event forward, or another issue, or dealing with people. It's very relevant with that experience that you get in the military. So I would tell people don't shortchange yourself, because you don't have documented all these different degrees or whatever. It's all about the experience level. And I don't have a slew of degrees, but what I do have, the military gave me, was 31 years of being involved in every type of situation and learning from those to take it to the next level and then pass it on down to the people below me. Mm-hmm. That can't be trained. You can't get that in a classroom.
I love that. I think the two things I'm really appreciating from your story is, first of all, the sense of, because I appreciate that you don't look at the title. For me, from an outsider's perspective, it's an incredible title at an incredible organization. And it's encouraging to me to see that underneath that is this bedrock of operations. Like, I think a lot of listeners can relate to, like, yeah, in the military, I'm doing operations, and that could translate to even something as grandiose as working with the Hornets. And then I also love that, you're pointing out for listeners, it's not about degrees. It's not about titles. It's not about all of these things that people sometimes fixate on, and to really value the depth of experience that they have in the military and how difficult it would be to obtain those leadership experiences outside of the military and to really value what they bring to the table, even if they're intimidated making that switch from the military to a very different job.
I totally agree. You said it very well.
Thank you.
That's the message I would put out to them.
What about, I know that some listeners really enjoy just getting granular. Could you give people a sense of what a day in your shoes looks like? Maybe it's just a random day from last week, or maybe a representative day. What does your day look like throughout the course of a day?
So, I'm a part of little, what do they call me? They say sometimes I can be anal with my days, I guess it is. Because I always go back. So I would say I'll pick Tuesday. So Tuesday, up at 5:30 in the gym by 6:30, 6:37. I do about a 45 to hour workout. When you get older, you have to figure out how to keep yourself squared away. But I was always a couple of things I learned when I was at Fort Bragg for all those years. We ran Ardennes all the time, but it was all about, okay, I was running hard for the military to keep in shape. But somewhere, I think when I got about 15 years, I figured out, you're doing it for yourself. So you got to keep doing it. So I kept doing it. So I probably go about 5 days a week, just for myself. Mm-hmm. Not trying to prove a point to anybody else, it's a habit, but it was a good habit. And I don't visit the doctor quite often. My bones crack every now and then. But normally I would start that the same way. I started that on Tuesday. I'm normally in the office. So I come in, I'll go work out, probably in my desk about 8:30. Probably have I think my sister tried to space it out about 2 to 3 meetings in the morning, maybe 2 to 3 in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. And it goes to anywhere to 6:30, about 6:30 at night, maybe. But see, mine's a little different because my wife doesn't stay with me in Charlotte. My wife stays in Fayetteville, so I commute. I either come on Mondays, or either I come on Tuesdays, I go home on Thursdays, or maybe Fridays. She has refused to move because all our kids were born there, and she retired from the hospital there. And so we normally treat it like if I was going away on a field training exercise, I go away for 3 or 4 days and come back. Mm-hmm. So that, I think it works good for us. I like that. And I got a condo. She can come up and stay whenever she wants to, but it works out well. So I'll grind it out for about 3 or 4 days. But that's normally what it is.
That's awesome. What about, I imagine many listeners, this is in some ways a dream for them to go into, I'll just call it maybe sports management types roles. What advice do you give to listeners about how to break into that industry, or how to even get a start in that industry?
I think one of it is about figuring out what did you really do in the military and how you line that up with some basic things. One is basic on leadership. What do you do when you handle different types of situations you gave, which falls in the category of project management, no matter however you phrase it. If you manage projects, you can do it like that. Because in a lot of the sports management area, a lot is about just doing things particularly well and following directions and understanding the task at hand somewhat. You have some outliers, like if you're in the creative, you got to have a special skill set. And there's some other areas you have to have special skill set. But the general of it is I'll say in the arena, we have people that's got to run projects, do concerts. They just got a basic degree in communication. But they can come in and get in sports management, and then within that, they find, if you want to get in the area of being able to figure out how to work with shows, getting shows set up, and we got quite a few people do that. If you want to run in the area of learning how to market the shows, you can take a quick class, or we give class. And a lot of times what we try to do is build our own. So we have an intern program. So we have people that apply for internships. And all you have to do is be enrolled in some type of college, taking a course, and you can see if you qualify for internship. A lot of times we just look at it, we go screen the list, and then I look at who have people from the military that apply for it. We'll see how they fit in to give them an opportunity, to give them a feel, and then try to show the light. But it's not that difficult. You just got to figure out, and the main thing you got to say is, it doesn't work for me. You got to get away from that. You got to figure out, how can it work for you? Is there a possibility? And then you got to figure out how to grind it out if that's really where you want to be at.
I love that.
Don't
Yeah.
shortchange yourself. That's it.
Mhm. I love that shifting mindset though that you're pointing to, of just like really shifting your mindset to focus on what you bring to the table, not shortchanging yourself, and seeing what you can do rather than looking at the things that all the roadblocks in the way, looking at that positive approach to things. That's really powerful.
I think some of it is because when people go into the military, they go in there because they're not ready for college.
Mhm.
They don't have anything else.
Mhm.
So when they come out, they have that fear factor. Okay, when I come, I'm going back in the same world I ran from, and they keep forgetting that when they went into the military, there were so many things they learned.
Mhm.
They found out who they were as individuals, and they should have developed some confidence in their ability to do certain things well. It's just a matter of them figuring out what is that one thing that they really want to do, and understand that you get out, you're gonna have one job, you're gonna have two jobs, you're gonna have three jobs, and maybe four jobs. Okay, don't worry about that. Worry about that first job you're gonna get, and try to do it well as you can. And at some point, just transition to the next job. That's what people do to college. They go to college, you get a 4-year degree to get out. They find that first job. Some of them don't last about 3 or 4 months, and they're chasing the next job. Then they're chasing the next job. It's the same method, but you just got to think it through rather than just getting, as soon as you get out, you have that fear factor, or you don't plan before you get out. If I know I'm going to get out, and I said, this is my last term, I'm going to get out in April of next year, I should already be trying to figure out now what I think I'm going to do, go talk to someone out in different areas or get online. They got so many opportunities for give you information and different resources to help veterans. There's no way you should wait till April and not know what you're doing. If you have, you fail yourself.
Mm-hmm. It makes me think of what you said at the start of the interview about how you entered the Army as a boy and you left a man. And it's interesting to think about, you do enter in at a young age and you have these thoughts of the world around you. And then a lifetime occurs, you leave the military, but it's like you re-enter that world that you had left as a boy. And so what I love about what you're saying is about, not entering back into that world with the same mindset that you left it, of you had said running away or whatever reason someone went into it, like realizing all that you learned, all that you've grown, all these unbelievable experiences that you've had. And I know that almost every guest on the show talks about how they're intimidated when they leave the military, but I love your message of not not letting that overpower you and realizing the strength with which you're leaving. And I think you're a great example of entering into the civilian workforce, having an open mind, learning, growing, and that can take you a long way.
Yeah, I think it's about accepting. The military taught me, said every day is going to be one of the mottos that we always had. It was every day is going to be a challenge in the military. So every day you have to be ready for that. And whatever comes at you, some days are going to be worse than the next day. And you just say, okay, bring it on. I'm ready for it. And that's the same way you have to do when you get out, is understand, okay, it's going to be a down. No, today was a bad day. All right. As I tell my assistants, I tell quite a few people here, all right, today was a bad day. Yesterday was a bad day. But you can't do anything about yesterday. Mm-hmm. All you can do is change today and prepare yourself for tomorrow. If you drag him and worry about what happened yesterday, you can't do anything with it. Just let it go. Mm-hmm. What can you do today to correct some shortfalls from yesterday? And how do you prepare tomorrow from what yesterday led you, what you find out today? I think those are the phases that I try to use, and I try to share that with so many. So we have so many we have groups of people they do 4-year degree, and in some cases they don't have a job, so they want to be a salesperson. They say, "Oh, come on, I'll be a seller." Seller's a hard job, but they don't have anything. That's 100 phone calls you have to make per day. And I tell a lot of people, look, we don't think you're gonna make it. Okay, so figure out. We can carry you. At the most time, we get probably about a year out of those people, and they transition. It's automatic. You can have about 20 of them. They're only gonna do about a year in their transition. You have some that step up because it's really what they want. But the other one said, okay, look, the momentum is most people stay here a year, so you got to figure out what's your next job gonna be.
That's great. What about given you reached the peak of leadership in the military, and now you're in a very high level of leadership in the civilian sector? You've spoken a little bit about this, but what differences do you find in the way that you lead now versus the way that you led in the military?
Um, the military was a little different because you had people that were there for a period of time, and they were going to stay for a while, 3 or 4 years, and they had a commitment, and they were really in it. In the civilian world, they may be here and they're looking for that next job some case. And if things don't go the way they want, they're looking for the next job, or either they're looking for the next paycheck. In the military, there was a dedication. Most E9s were getting paid the same. Most first sergeants getting, unless they had different years of service. But it was a little more where outside they're driven a little bit more about, they are driven a little bit by titles. They are driven a little bit about compensation. And they are also driven a little about, they want that nice job that's real comfortable to them, that make them happy every day. In the military, you had jobs that, you were given those jobs, and it necessarily wasn't the job you asked for, but you were given that task and you had to execute. And here they look for the one that's going to make them feel comfortable a little bit. That's the difference, because I think it's a little more, the military, I went to Korea. I think I had 3 tours in Korea, and a couple of them I volunteered for when I didn't. But I accepted just like whatever. In the civilian world, if you give them a hard task and it's too hard for them, they'll try to figure out what's the next job, or either they'll go bid themselves out, and you have no choice unless, North Carolina is a right to work. They can terminate, they can leave, tell you tomorrow that I got a notice I'm leaving. And if you don't have a succession plan in place, then your corporation is hurt.
That's great. I also, the next question, I'm always hesitant because I grew up with an older brother, and often, people would talk about him, but I have to ask, because your brother is one of the greatest basketball players of all time. What is that like?
I always try to figure out how to answer that question, because I always looked at it a little bit different. I look at him, I got 2 brothers. He was my youngest brother. So he's my little brother. And then I was in the military already when he was still in college, was still in high school and college. And then when things changed for him, I think the thing that really made me realize life changed a little bit is I either could have decided to get out and be with him and get involved in what he was doing, or either I could still become my own man and live my life the way I live it, and then be able to support him from afar and not give up on my dream that I put in place. And so I think I always look at, okay, he's got his business, he's doing well, and he's doing what he's got to do. Everybody finds something that they can excel at, and that's their calling was basketball for him. And I always look at my calling was in the military. And we always talk about, between the 2 of us, his career did well, and he made a lot of money. My career, I did well, and it made me a better person. But it also gave me something that I could celebrate. He's retired, I'm retired. So I try to compare them. I think it maybe some people probably couldn't do it like that because of the name and the title, but I never let it get too far out in front of me, because, his name is the same as mine, last name. But, it's all about earning your first name. His is Michael, mine was Command Sergeant Major. And so the idea, you try to compare it, so you got a good feel and understanding from him, as well as don't let him get in front of you what you try to accomplish yourself. And so I always try to keep it in that perspective. I don't know if that really answered the way you wanted it.
No, I think that's wonderful. I think that, I think what's powerful about that is I feel this myself. I hear this from other guests on the show, is living in the way the world is now with Facebook and LinkedIn. We're always seeing what other people are doing. We're seeing on Instagram this person's success, and on this. And for me, the temptation, I view it as like getting out of my swim lane. It's like I'm going this way, and then I see all these things over here, and it's tempting to feel like, oh, I should be chasing that, or I should be chasing that. And that's what came up for me when you were talking about it, is your brother having this career path and this calling. But I love the resilience of your saying, like, look, this is my calling. This is my place. This is me earning my first name. And I do think that there's something there for every listener, because I think we all can get tied in to chasing someone else's dream or believing that someone else has it better than us, which I don't believe exists. And so I love that you forged your own way. And even more so, again, this is my opinion, the military is the epitome of forging your own way. My experience in the military is it doesn't matter who your family is. It doesn't matter who your friends are. Like, you are judged by your ability and your ability alone. And so I think it's even more powerful to view you continuing in that for 31 years and forging out your own way. I think that's a great lesson for listeners.
I think, and you've captured, because I think one of the things I always took when I look back, when I got ready to retire, and probably the night before I walked on the field, and I said, okay, look, tomorrow there won't be any tears. So tomorrow, what you have to do is understand that I was a little country boy, didn't know what I was doing, but I had ROTC and I went in the military, and it showed me life. It made me as a person, and it gave me a position that I had the ability to develop a family, do the things I felt was worthwhile. But I also had an opportunity to get out if I was just tired of it. I could have got out, but I didn't, because at that point it became more about the people around me rather than about me. When I got to 20, and between 20 and 30, it was really, all right, how many more people can I develop? How can I help this team, this Army team? How can I give back? How can I help develop leaders and give back just like people gave back to me? Because there was quite a few leaders that took care of that little 17-year-old guy when he first came in. I think I was right at the end of Vietnam. And so there were so many other people that were still in then that really, had it rough before me, but they did, without a doubt, they pulled me to the side and showed me some ways to be successful. And so I never really forgot about that. And I tried to pass that on all those years. And even when I stayed the additional year, it was about making sure that I could get those people to a position. One is that they could go over, deploy, and come back. But also that I could show them, if you're going to lead, you got to lead all the time. My family didn't want me to go, but I felt it wasn't about me. It was about that team. If you're going to be dedicated, you got to be dedicated to the end of the task. And you have to walk away on your own terms. Don't let nobody else dictate the terms somewhat. But things change. You know how it is, but you just got to do all you can do all the time.
I love that sense too of gratitude, where, I get this sense that you're really grateful for when you were 17, all the people who contributed to your growth and helped you. And I love how that kept you serving, of giving back, just as people had given back to you. And I love that example now that even, 10 plus years out of the military, you're still, being on this podcast, you're giving back to the military community, you're paying it forward. And it's powerful to see that example.
Well, I guess most sergeant majors would tell you that there's always a saying that we never really retire. We really just fade away, and people reach out to us every now and then, and you give a word of wisdom, but you're not in charge anymore. So, you just fade away. You give whatever knowledge or whatever inspiration you can from afar. And so you still have an obligation. You have an obligation to give until you can't give anymore.
Well, I always like to leave the last question open-ended, and that is, we've got a lot of people on active duty who are thinking about making the transition to a civilian career. And we've got a lot of veterans who've been working in the civilian career for a while, and they're thinking about their next career move. Any final words of wisdom that you would give to them as they think about thriving in their post-military career?
I would say the ones that's getting ready to transition, don't be scared of it. Really sit back and analyze all the things that you've done for the time you've been in, and figure out how to convert that when you do your resumes, figure out how to convert that from your military responsibility to what you plan on doing, because there's ways to transition that. But the other is to reach out to different people that's out there before you get in the window. And so you don't commit you don't commit to get out when you're not prepared to get out, especially from a financial perspective, because the military is still good. And people just got to figure out how it fits them. And some people just won't fit, and you need to transition, but figure out your path to transition. Don't let it come up on you and you're not prepared. And then I would think for the senior, like my level and above, you got to step back. In order to be successful, you got to figure out how to step back in order to go forward. Mm-hmm. If you think you're going to come out, you're going to transition, you're going to keep going, there's more struggle in that than it is if you figure out, okay, I just want to transition, so maybe I have to take one step or two steps back with a path to be able to get it back in a period of time. For the veterans that's currently out there already, I would say just keep grinding it out. Don't accept no. Realize in the military, there's always situations that we went up on and we didn't get what we want. Things didn't go to where we wanted, and all we did was figure out how to deal with it currently and develop another path forward. I use a terminology. I tell people when it's difficult, sometime going forward, maybe you ought to step back a minute and figure a way to go around it or go over the top of it, but don't let it stop you from moving forward. Some people just want to give up if it gets too difficult. That's not how you're going to be successful. You have to figure out how to get to your ultimate goal. And sometimes it's got to be tough. Sometimes the tougher the better, because you learn from that more than anything else. If it's always easy, you're never going to really learn. So when it really gets tough, you're going to just throw your hands up and quit.
That's great. I love that sense of, continuing forward. And sometimes it takes a step back to be able to move forward. And I can get into the spot of just ramming my head against the wall and trying to break through. And I love that you're like tempering that with like, yeah, sometimes you got to step back and get some perspective and find a way to go around it. But overall, you're always moving forward. It's powerful. And it's you're a great example of that, because I just put myself in your shoes, 31 years in the military. I feel like I would be entitled to a certain level of leadership and responsibility, and I would be set in my ways. But I love in your story, your sense of after 31 years, being willing to take a step back, being willing to learn and grow and transition. And I think that's great for listeners, whether they're serving 3 years or 30 years, to adopt that mindset.
Good.
Well, James, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for sharing your story with us today.
No problem whatsoever. I was glad to do it, man.
Surface.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Quick couple admin points. We release brand new episodes every single Monday and Thursday. Those are usually recorded about a month or so before they go live. Every Monday and Thursday, we have an interview, usually almost always with a military veteran about their civilian career. More and more, we're starting to add in experts who may not be veterans, but may have some expertise that will help the military veteran community. Saturdays, I typically post more of a behind the scenes episode, which is a free form format. I try to use what I'm calling a mullet format. And by that, I mean business up front, party in the back, talking through admin points, professional topics related to the podcast. It might be a conversation I had that week. It might have been an interview I had that week, but just trying to share things that are top of mind that may help you in more of a free form, straight from the heart format. And then the party in the back is the personal side of things, just kind of more free-flowing thoughts on life, on improving oneself, just kind of whatever's going on in life, and trying to be authentic and honest about those things as well. Special thanks. We have an all-volunteer army of people behind Beyond the Uniform making this possible. We do this on our lunch breaks, on our evenings, on our weekends, because we love the military community. We want to give back. We want to make a difference. We want that as part of the purpose in our life that we valued in the military. So special thanks to Steve Bain. Steve does pretty much everything. He helps secure guests. He does our newsletter. He keeps the reels rolling and keeps me sane. Kathleen Dillon, the first person to join our team. She writes text transcripts of every single episode. It's wild. She keeps up with 2 of these a week despite a demanding career and education right now. But those transcripts help us get more SEO value, helps her audience more. Andrew Woolridge is our data guru. He helps us understand the numbers, which is the easiest way for us to figure out how we can better support you, and adds kind of the data oversight for that. Rick Healy does all of our social media. He is gaining more and more of an audience for us by getting our videos, getting our podcasts out on social channels. The best way to stay in contact with us is if you go to beyondtheuniform.org, there is a newsletter. You'll have a little pop-up that comes up. You can put your email in. We email twice per month. We try to be respectful, but it is a great way to get appraised of upcoming events, upcoming interviews, promos where companies are giving discounts to Beyond the Uniform listeners, and more. This does cost money to put on. We are committed to not charging veterans directly, and the way that we kind of offset costs is through corporate sponsors. So if you know of a company that would like to get in front of a military audience and their families, that's one way that we can both add value to our members, but also offset the costs of Beyond the Uniform and give us a little bit of budget to start expanding what we're doing. So that's the best way you can help us. If that's not something that you can do, a positive review on iTunes is greatly appreciated. Have a wonderful week. We will be back Monday, Thursday, and Saturday with more interviews. And keep up the listening. Take care.